Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into how businesses use data analytics to make those smarter decisions.
Hmm.
And of course, we'll be looking at how the business analyst's role is evolving, in this data-driven world.
Right.
Our source material today is a business data analytics exam prep course.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it uses materials from both the IDA, that's the International Institute of Business Analysis,
Yeah.
and McGraw-Hill. So it gives us a pretty good overview of this whole field.
Well, one thing that really stands out to me about this course is that it goes beyond, just the technical side of data analysis.
Hmm.
It really dives into how you actually apply these skills, like in a real business setting.
Right, exactly. And just glancing at the syllabus, it seems like they're really emphasizing this idea of a cyclical process.
Yeah.
So they start with like identifying the research questions,
Uh-huh.
then they move through data collection and analysis,
Right.
and then ultimately, the goal is to influence business decisions based on those insights.
And that cyclical approach is key. Like you said, it's not just a one-time thing.
Right.
It's constantly refining your questions, you're gathering new data, and then using those insights to, make more decisions and improve.
Yeah, like a feedback loop almost, where each cycle of analysis kind of leads to new questions
Exactly.
and then a deeper understanding of the problem you're looking at. But I'm curious about something. The course mentions that business analysts aren't just, number crunchers anymore.
Right.
It says they're more like interpreters or liaisons. What exactly does that mean?
Well, I think it shows a shift in the business analyst's role. They're like the bridge between the data professionals, those are the people who, love to crunch numbers,
Yeah.
and then the business stakeholders who are the ones who have to make the decisions.
So it's not enough to just be good at analyzing data. You also have to be able to translate those insights, turn them into something meaningful
Absolutely.
that the business can actually use.
Yep, and that's why communication is so important for business analysts.
Oh, for
They
sure.
need to be able to take all that data and present it in a way that makes sense to the decision makers.
So are you saying I'm almost like a storytelling role?
In a way, yeah, like they got to weave a good story that resonates with people.
I can see how that would be valuable. And speaking of that, the course actually has this whole section called Use Results to Influence Decision Making.
Oh, yeah?
It's all about the practical application of all this stuff. What were some of the things that stood out to you in that section?
Well, one of the big things was how important it is to make sure your solutions match up with, like, the big picture goals of the organization.
Right.
It's not enough to just find some interesting little patterns in the data, right?
Right.
You got to make sure those insights are actually going to be valuable to the business.
So it's about like connecting the dots between the data and the big picture, right?
Exactly.
So your analysis is actually helping to move the business forward.
Right.
Okay. And speaking of moving things forward, the course also mentions something called implementation plans.
Hmm.
So what are those, and how do they fit into this whole data analysis process?
Well, think of an implementation plan as a roadmap.
Okay.
It takes those insights from your data and shows you how to actually get results.
Hmm.
You outline all the steps, figure out who's doing what resources you need, and how long it's all going to take.
So it's a pretty detailed plan, right? It's not just a to-do list.
You got it. It's much more than that.
Okay. So what else goes into creating one of these?
Well, a good plan will also include things like dependency mapping.
Hmm.
That's where you figure out how all the different tasks are connected
Right.
and which ones you need to finish before you can start others.
Okay, that makes sense. If you've got a complex project, you got to understand how all the pieces fit together.
Exactly.
But what about roadblocks, things going wrong? Do these plans address that?
That's where risk assessment comes in. You got to identify any potential problems that could, mess things up,
Right.
and then figure out how to deal with them proactively.
So these plans really need to be thorough.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got the data analysis, the interpretation of those results, and then the plan to implement all the insights.
Uh-huh.
But who's actually like in charge of making sure all this happens?
Uh-huh.
It can't just be the data scientist, right?
Right. And this is where the business analyst steps up. The course suggests they're the ones who are best suited to manage the change that comes from, all these data-driven insights.
So they're not just translating the data, they're also like leading the charge to implement those changes.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a lot of responsibility. So what kind of challenges do they face when they're doing this?
Well, one of the biggest is getting everyone on board.
Hmm.
Anytime you try to change things in an organization, there's going to be some pushback.
Yeah.
The business analyst has to be able to explain why the change is necessary, build relationships, address concerns,
Oh, okay.
and ultimately, get everyone moving in the same direction.
I imagine that takes a pretty specific set of skills.
It does.
It's not just about being analytical, right? You also need to be persuasive, maybe even a little bit diplomatic.
Absolutely. And that's why the course emphasizes communication skills and stakeholder management.
Makes sense.
It's not enough to just be a data expert. You have to be a people person, too.
So it sounds like the business analyst is becoming this kind of hybrid role.
Right.
Part data whiz, part communicator, part change manager.
Exactly.
So it's like they're at the center of all this data-driven decision-making.
Yeah, definitely.
The course material mentions that in some companies, business analysts even help pick the tech used to analyze data.
That's right. They can be really important there because they get both sides.
Right.
The business needs and also what the different tools can actually do.
Uh-huh.
So they make sure the company's picking tech that can actually answer the right questions.
It's like being a translator almost between the tech teams and the business side.
Yeah.
Making sure everyone's on the same page when it comes to data.
Right.
Now, the prep course also goes into specific techniques like predictive modeling, which sounds pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Predictive modeling is really interesting.
What's the basic idea?
Basically, you're using data from the past to try and figure out what's going to happen in the future. It's super helpful for businesses because it lets them anticipate changes and make better decisions.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine a retail company. They could use their sales data to try and predict which products are going to be popular next season.
Oh, I see. So instead of just reacting to what already happened, they can actually plan ahead.
Exactly. They can make smarter decisions about inventory and marketing and all that.
That makes a lot of sense, but I gotta wonder, how accurate are these models?
Well, no model's perfect, obviously. There are always going to be surprises and things you can't predict.
Right.
But that's why the course emphasizes model validation, making sure you're testing it out and seeing how well it actually works.
So you gotta make sure it's reliable.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the course material also talks about data visualization.
Right.
They say it's a super important skill for business analysts.
It really is.
Why?
Because you could have the most amazing insights in the world, but if you can't communicate them to anyone,
Right.
it's useless. So data visualization helps you take all that complex data and turn it into something people can actually understand.
So like charts and graphs and math boards.
Exactly. It makes it much easier to see the patterns and trends instead of just having a giant spreadsheet.
Okay, but those visualizations have to be more than just pretty pictures, right?
Oh, absolutely. They need to be clear and concise and tell a story that makes sense to the viewer.
It's like a visual storytelling with data.
Yeah, I like that. The business analyst is the author, guiding the reader through the information.
That's a great way to put it. Now, speaking of storytelling, the course actually mentions something called data storytelling. It sounds like it goes hand in hand with visualization.
It totally does. It's all about creating a narrative around the data, using visuals and language to make your point.
So you're not just presenting numbers, you're telling a story that people can connect with.
Right.
Okay. The course also gives some real-world case studies. Did any of those stand out to you?
Yeah, there was one about a healthcare company. They were trying to reduce the number of patients who had to be readmitted to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And by using data storytelling, they were able to figure out the key risk factors and come up with ways to intervene and keep people healthier.
That's awesome. A real-world example of how data can actually make a difference.
Exactly.
And it shows how important it is to really understand the problem you're trying to solve. You mentioned earlier how the course talks about aligning solutions with strategic goals.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little more?
Sure. The main idea is that you got to make sure your data analysis is actually helping the business succeed. So you start by figuring out what the organization's goals are, and then you focus your analysis on those specific needs.
So you're not just looking for any old insights, you're looking for the ones that will actually move the needle.
Exactly. And the course actually gives you a framework for doing this.
Oh, really?
It's called the SMART framework. It stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Oh, okay.
It's a good way to make sure your goals are clear and that they fit with the overall strategy.
So it helps you stay focused.
Yeah.
The course also dives into the use results to influence decision-making domain.
Right.
Which seems like it gets to the heart of why all this stuff is so important.
Yeah, that's really the whole point, isn't it? Data analysis isn't just about playing with numbers. It's about using those insights to make better decisions for the business.
But how do you make sure you're interpreting the data correctly?
Well, that's where critical thinking comes in.
Okay.
The course really stresses how important it is to question assumptions, look for biases in the data, and and validate your findings.
So you can't just take the data at face value.
Right, exactly. You got to be a little skeptical and make sure you're not jumping to conclusions.
I bet that also ties into communication skills.
Absolutely. You need to be able to explain your findings clearly, including any limitations in the data,
Right.
and present your recommendations in a way that people will understand and buy into.
So you're like a data detective and a data diplomat all rolled into one.
I like that.
We've talked a lot about the analytical side, but the course also emphasizes implementation.
Yeah, implementation is key.
Because if you don't actually put your insights into action, what's the point?
Exactly.
So how can business analysts help make sure that happens?
Well, one of the most important things is acting as a liaison between the data team and the people who will be affected by the changes. They can help communicate the goals, address concerns, and just make sure everyone's on the same page.
It's about getting everyone involved and feeling they're part of the process.
Right.
Now, the course also mentions change management frameworks.
Yeah, those are really helpful.
Oh, are those?
They're basically structured approaches to managing how people experience change.
Okay.
They help minimize resistance and make the transition smoother.
So it's like a roadmap for navigating organizational change.
Exactly.
Are there different types of frameworks?
Yeah, there are a few. One popular one is the Prasy-Adhikar model.
What's that?
It focuses on 5 things: awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement.
What's interesting is that it really focuses on the individual, how they experience the change.
Right. People need to understand why the change is happening before they'll buy in.
Makes sense. Does the course give any advice on how to actually apply these frameworks?
Oh, yeah. They emphasize tailoring your approach to the specific situation, communicating clearly, and making sure you involve everyone in the process.
So it's not just about the data, it's about the people, too.
Absolutely.
Speaking of people, the course also talks about professional development for business analysts. What are some of the in-demand skills and certifications?
Well, data visualization and storytelling are super important, like we've talked about.
Right.
And certifications like the CDAP from the IBO are really valuable.
So you got to keep learning and stay up to date.
Yeah, continuous learning is key in this field.
So it's not just about the technical stuff, it's about those soft skills, too.
Definitely. Being able to communicate and lead change are crucial.
The course even mentions networking.
Oh, yeah. Connecting with other people in the data analytics world is really important. It can lead to mentorship, insights, even job opportunities.
So like build your own little data-driven support network.
Exactly.
It seems like this whole data analytics world is constantly changing, new stuff popping up all the time.
It is, yeah.
How do people even keep up? You know, like if you want to be a business analyst, how do you make sure your skills are still relevant?
I think continuous learning is super important in this field.
Mm-hmm.
You got to stay up to date on the latest trends, maybe go to some conferences, get some more certifications.
Always be learning.
Right.
Which is actually kind of cool.
It is.
Keeps things interesting. Now, the course wraps up by talking about some emerging trends in data analytics. Did anything stand out to you there?
Well, one that's really interesting is the rise of artificial intelligence.
AI.
Yeah, AI and machine learning. They're already having a big impact. They can automate tasks, find patterns that humans might miss,
Right.
even generate insights on their own.
So does that mean humans are going to be out of a job?
I don't think so. I mean, AI can do a lot of the heavy lifting, but you still need human expertise to make sense of it all,
Okay.
to make strategic decisions and communicate those insights.
So it's more like they work together.
Yeah, exactly. Humans and machines collaborating to really unlock the power of data.
The course actually mentions something called augmented analytics.
Right, where AI is like an assistant for the human analysts, helping them do their job better.
And this all ties back to, the evolving role of the business analyst. They're becoming even more important in this whole data landscape.
Absolutely.
This deep dive has been really insightful. We've gone way beyond just the basics here.
We have.
We've looked at the whole cyclical process of data analysis, how the business analyst role is changing, how important it is to actually put those insights into action.
Right.
And even, some of the ethical stuff that comes up with all this data.
It's been a great discussion.
It really shows how powerful data is becoming, and business analysts are the ones who are harnessing that power.
That's right. They're the ones driving change.
So for anyone listening, whether you're already a data pro or just starting out, remember to keep learning, embrace the new tech, and work on your communication skills.
Those are the keys to success in this field.
Absolutely. Well, it's been great diving deep with you and all our listeners today.
Likewise.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what data can do.